Hey there! Recently I've been doing some research for an upcoming video when I have found this very interesting photograph. This is from the end of the 19th century, and you can clearly see that it is in Budapest because you get to see the chain bridge here in the background. You can also see that this was made during the time of a flood because the river Danube is all over the streets. But that's not the reason why I have found this picture very interesting. It is because that if you look carefully, you will see a whole district, a whole area that today doesn't actually exist anymore. Only this small temple, this church here, is what you can find today at what we call the Tabán, which was the way they called this district back in those days. This place used to be a very important part of the city because this is where people used to get from the Buda side to the Pest side by using ferries. But after the first bridge between the two cities was created, the chain bridge, then ferrying wasn't the best option anymore. So the importance of the city naturally started to fade away. And I'm kind of sad that this part of Budapest is long gone because it has all the things that I really love about a city. It has these small and narrow streets with the old houses, and these neighborhoods were basically taking over the slopes between the Castle Hills and the Gellért Hill area. Plus, there were also times when this place developed a little bit and it had some really breathtaking buildings, some nice architecture to look at. But unfortunately, during the 1930s, they demolished this whole place because they wanted to erect a completely new district, a newer part of Budapest, but that never happened because then World War II basically occurred and this project never came to be. And again, it's kind of sad that Budapest lost this part of its charm. This was sometimes referred to as the Montmartre of Budapest, that famous district and area in Paris. But today, all you get to see there is a big road crossing Budapest and also some parks that you can enjoy. Now, this video is not about the Tabán itself, not about this specific district that once used to be a part of the city, but it is more like a praise for the website from where these photographs are from, because whenever we make these videos, I try to learn about the history, I try to share as much as I can, and sometimes you need something that you can use as a visual reference to tell the story. And this website's mission is to preserve old memories, old photographs. So people basically donate their old pictures that they find at home, and Fortepan, the company behind the website, they basically digitize everything and put it up on their website so that you can find anything from Budapest's and Hungary's past, but even photographs from anywhere around the world that was shared with them. And I really appreciate the work that they do because without their photos, I wouldn't be able to tell the stories about Budapest and Hungary as much as I can. So today I thought, why not? Let's go through some pictures. For example, let's look at how Budapest has changed over the course of the last century. Because if we circle back to this photograph here, you can see the castle palace on the castle hill, but it looks completely different to how we see it today. And in fact, because this was done at the end of the 19th century, there were even more renovations and even more changes to the castle itself. And this is how it looked like before World War II. You can see that it has a lot more detail than what you can see today when you visit the palace itself. But why did it change again, and why does it look like the way it does today? Well, basically, at the end of World War II, Budapest was under siege, and basically the whole city was completely destroyed. A lot of these famous buildings were also damaged heavily, including the palace itself. And during the communist times, there wasn't really much money to rebuild everything, and there was also some sort of a pushback from the government about the old ways. So the way the palace was reconstructed was using cheap materials, basically doing cheaper labor, and that's how we ended up with the castle district that we see today. But I grew up with that view and I kind of enjoy that view. However, there's right now the so-called Haussmann program, which is named after one of our famous architects. They want to basically re-establish how the castle district and many buildings in the castle district used to look like. And eventually, in a couple of years, the castle palace itself will again look the way it used to before World War II. Now, there are also some other fascinating examples of how Budapest has changed and unfortunately lost some of its buildings. Like, take this one for example. This here, you might not know where it is, but it is the National Theatre. Now, if we look at this building from a different angle, you can see another building in the background that may be a clue of where we are right now, where this picture was taken. That building you can see if you're standing on the Blaha Luisa Square. Blaha Luisa was a famous actress in our history, and she also played in this very theater. Unfortunately, it was demolished. They wanted to put it at a different place. There is something called Aquarium at Deák Ferenc there, which is a large open space. That's where originally they wanted to move the National Theatre, but later on it moved to South Budapest. That's where you can find it today. It's a more modern looking building. However, I still kind of appreciate the new building itself because it gives a nice homage to how the old one used to look like, and the park surrounding it and every aspect of the new modern building is kind of cool. But today, we're not here to talk about the modern new buildings, we're here to talk about the past and what Budapest used to have. Like, for example, this one here. This bridge may kind of remind you of the Liberty Bridge that we have today because of all the nice little details that it has, and the shape kind of looks like it. But this is a different bridge, and you cannot see this bridge today. This used to be the old Erzsébet Bridge, the Erzsébet Híd as we call it. Now, if you look carefully, you can see the resemblance to what we have today as the new Erzsébet Bridge, which again is also an example of during the communist times, things were built up in a more simpler and with a more clean aesthetic. Now, there's another photograph that I want to show you that is kind of related to the Erzsébet Bridge and the existence of it. This picture of some streets in Budapest is also from the end of the 19th century. And if you zoom in carefully, you can see that the name of the street is Kígyó köz, Kígyó utca, or Snake Street. You can find that street today, but it looks a lot more different than it looks on this picture. This shows you how the old downtown Pest used to look like before all the large courtyard buildings started to take over the inner city. And in this picture right here, you can see a corner with some of these old, smaller 1 or 2 story houses that were still there, but there are already some courtyard buildings in the background. Plus, you can see the towers of this church here, which is very important because this is one of the clues of where we are right now. If we circle back to that picture of the Erzsébet Bridge, you can see right there, hiding behind the bridge, the same 2 towers of that same church. In this much older photograph, you can see the church without the bridge in front of it, and you can see some of those buildings that we just saw in that very picture. But this area also is something that was completely destroyed because they needed space for the road that was leading towards the bridge. Now, circling back to the castle district itself, if you're exploring the castle area, then you will find a tower that stands on its own. That's the Mária Magdolna Tower. You can walk up to it, get a nice view when the place is open, but around it you will see ruins. You will see the old walls that used to be there, and even the frame of a window, of a church window. This is how that old church used to look like. But unfortunately, over time, they didn't really maintain it, and after World War II, instead of rebuilding it, they basically just left the ruins there as sort of a memory of the church that once used to be there. Now, today there are no plans to rebuild the church. It will remain as is. However, there are other buildings which we lost over time in the castle district and are being rebuilt right now as part of this Haussmann program. Some of the buildings are luckily already done, like for example this one over here, which is right next to the gorgeous Matthias Church. Now, this building originally in the old times used to be the home of the Royal Finance Ministry, but today, after it was rebuilt, it will serve a different different kind of a governmental process. It will be the home of the Ministry of Internal Affairs. Now, another building that's also nearing its completion is the old structure for the military high command. Now, at the end of World War II, just like many other buildings, this one was also heavily damaged. And after the war, instead of basically rebuilding it and maintaining it, they removed some of the top floors to make the ruins safe. But after that, the structure had really no purpose. However, now they are rebuilding it back to its former glory, and that also impacts the skyline over Buda Castle, because its large dome is also returning. And right now, if you look from the Pest side, you can clearly see that unique dome coming out from the top of the castle hill. Now, another building that is currently being rebuilt right next to the High Command's building is the palace for Archduke Joseph. And this building, I never really knew that it was there because there was nothing here in its place. I'm not sure what kind of purpose it will serve. Maybe it's going to be a museum, maybe it's going to do some governmental function. But another building that was also rebuilt, which you can also see today because it was one of the first ones that was completed after all of this program has started, is the National Horse Stable. Now, if you want to come here to see horses, unfortunately, it's not a proper stable anymore. It's more like of an event space. It's really fascinating to see all of these very old photographs and some of these old buildings. But this website is not just about looking at gorgeous pictures of old buildings, it's also about looking at history, because it gives you some glimpses of the horrors of war, how at the end of World War II, during the siege of Budapest, not just the buildings were destroyed, but how that impacted the lives of people. Seeing photos of the moments that lead up to the horrors of this war, with the planes flying over Budapest, throwing their bombs at the streets, and how the bridges were basically destroyed, and how much sadness and sorrow these times in our history had. And again, it's not just about the buildings, it's also about the people. Like the times when Jews were marked by the yellow star on their clothes. If you go to the Danube River and you go to the Shoes on the Danube River monument, you only see the shoes there. But if you also look at some of the photographs that are available about the horrors of these times, it gives a perspective of what you see there when you visit the Shoes on the Danube River. And it really helps to visualize a little bit about the sadness that was caused during those times. But of course, you can also use this website to glimpse into other parts of Hungarian history, like one of the most important moments of the last century in 1956, October 23rd, when the Hungarians revolted against the communist regime. You can see moment from moment how it all occurred, starting as peaceful protests for economic changes, systematic changes, democratic changes, and support for what happened in Poland during those times. You can see that once those protests became even more vocal, the government wanted to crack down on the loud Hungarians and basically ordered the secret police to shoot into the protesting crowd. And that was just the spark that was needed to ignite the fuel that was raging in the hearts of Hungarians during these times. People cut out the crest from the Hungarian flag that featured the Red Star. They basically cut down Stalin's statue and decapitated it. You can see how all of these events basically turned the streets of Budapest into a war zone, a war between the Hungarian people and the communist government, who then basically called in the Soviet army, which then unfortunately, as we know, ultimately led to the revolution being crushed. But it's not just important historical moments that are represented through photographs on this website. For instance, recently I went to the Cave Church in Budapest, and I have never been there before, and I didn't know that it is an important symbolic place for the friendship between Hungarians and Polish people, because at the beginning of World War II, when Germany invaded Poland and Soviets on the other side also invaded Poland, a lot of Polish civilians and military members tried to escape the country, and Hungary and Romania were the places where they could go, and a lot of them came to Hungary as refugees, and that church was one of the many places where they could pray for the war to end and for them to be able to go home. And seeing some of these photos on this website really helped me to also visualize some of these parts of history as well. Now, of course, it doesn't have to be always a building or an important historical moment that captures my imagination. One of my favorite videos that we made recently was about courtyards, and initially I just wanted to make that video because I was fascinated by the architecture and I wanted to learn more about these places, why they came to be. And as I was researching and I wanted to show old photographs of courtyards, I not only found pictures of courtyards themselves, but the people who were living there. And seeing these old photographs with the people just living their day-to-day lives made my imagination even go wilder and got me even more interested in what their lives may have been like. What are behind these smiles? What are behind some of these scenes, these family moments of people getting married or just coming together for a photo, having fun in these courtyards. Scrolling through hundreds of these photos got me really excited and invested into tell the story that we told with that video. And as I was looking for old pictures from Budapest, I have also stumbled upon this very one. This is from Széchenyi Thermal Bath, and the only reason why I wanted to show you guys this one is because there's a lot of complaint that the Széchenyi Thermal Bath is too famous and it's always too crowded. Well, guess what? A century ago, it was also very famous, and look at these pictures. It was just packed with people. I'm not even sure if there are days today when you can see so many people in Széchenyi Thermal Bath. But you can also find some very cool pictures here on this website. Like for instance, this here is a csikós or a gulyás, a cattle herder from the Great Hungarian Plains. And you can also see some of these photos where you can clearly get an idea of what they used to dress like, what life on this endless plain could have been for a shepherd or a cattle herder. These are really interesting pictures and I really like to see them. I really love to look at the past of Budapest and this country, and I hope you guys got inspired to check out this website and also scroll through some of the pictures that are there. Maybe you can find some of your old loved ones, for example, or you can find some really cool ones that you can use as background pictures. If you did find some of these pictures awesome, then maybe leave a comment below, or if you found some new ones, then you can also share those in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching, and if you don't want to miss our future videos, then make sure to subscribe to the channel. Thank you again, and see you guys in those future videos. Bye!